Welcome, you all. I am Baron Baptiste. Welcome to Disrupt the Drift. This is a place where we can tell the truth and the truth can be told. We want to talk about today, there's an epidemic of anxiety in the world right now. There's a crisis of no meaning, no purpose. And I think the outcome or the result of no real meaning and purpose in life is anxiety. There's something about being self-conscious that is the same thing as being anxious. I think people that are overly self-conscious, in other words, are anxious. The more you think about yourself, the more miserable you are. And we have a crisis of anxiety. And I think people are overly focused on their own problems, their own issues, their own sense of having lost themselves or having not enough meaning and purpose in life. And so we want to talk about today what it is to be up to something, or better said, just committed to something in life, committed to something bigger than yourself as the way out of anxiety. David, what's your take?
Baron, let me put it to you this way. If you have run over a nail and it's deflating your tire, but you've decided to take 1,000-mile trip with this nail in your tire and it's deflating and you keep trying to fill it up to make the tire work, but there's a hole in the tire and it's not going to be remedied by just filling it up. You've got to change the tire or you've got to patch it. You've got to do something to stop the leak. Now, the problem is this, is that maybe it's not your fault, and most likely it isn't your fault that there's a nail in your tire and you feel it. You lose control of your vehicle at a certain point when your tire pressure gets too low and the rest. But what your responsibility is to identify what's wrong with the way your car is driving. Now, if you identify what's wrong, then you can say, okay, there's something that needs to be done. There's a remedy, right, for the problem. But the average person will spend an entire lifetime knowing that there's a problem, having a sense that there's a problem, but then not necessarily addressing the problem. And here's the other part of it, is that part of the reason we don't address problems is because we were all born to succeed, but there's an element of our life that causes us to be programmed to fail. And it's the old saying, doing something over and over again, expecting a different result. And there's an expectation that we have to get rid of it. And let me tell you something. Yes, sometimes you have to do something repetitively in order to get it down. With anything like a sport or with a job that you're learning or a trade or something, a musical piece, you got to do it over and over again so that you get it in your repertoire. You get the feeling of it. But when it comes to making mistakes, the more you make the same mistake, the worse it gets. So that's my volley right there.
Yeah. I think back to this idea of a bigger responsibility, I'll call it. When you don't have responsibility, people avoid responsibility, and there's a real cost to that. But safe, you avoid responsibility, you avoid commitment to things, and you stay in a comfort zone, a velvety, warm comfort zone. And then the question is not, will I survive if I step out of the comfort zone? The real question is, I survive the comfort zone, because in there's the anguish, the despair, the sense of being lost, alone in life. But there's something about bigger long-term responsibility, commitment, where you stick your neck out. You put yourself in a situation. An example I have is I got married when I was probably 25, 26. And that changed things for me. Suddenly I got a little more serious about life. And then when our first son was born, I remember being in the birthing room and holding my brand new little son and looking at him. And in that moment, something shifted to me, that my life was no longer just about me, myself, and I. I realized in that moment, I'm responsible for another human being. I'm responsible for my family. In that moment, I would say the boy in me began to diminish, and the man in me began to emerge. And I got serious suddenly about life and being a provider and showing up in a responsible way. I suddenly was responsible for something bigger than myself, other people, my family, my son. And, but it was in that commitment that that's where I found it gave me some kind of structure where my life was about something bigger than myself. And it's where I started to grow, where I started to develop resiliency, where I started to develop wisdom, not all at once. I'm not saying that, but there was a seriousness of having now this bigger commitment that put my ass on the line, so to speak. And it kept me in the long game, the long term, that responsibility. And then how I started showing up at work and in my dealings with people. And I was responsible for something that I started finding deeper meaning, deeper or purpose. It gave me purpose in life. But I think it could be anything in life, but when we avoid that, I think we're doomed to some kind of life in a box that becomes more self-focused, just whatever, pleasure seeking or just hedonistic living, just looking for pleasure and staying comfortable. But again, in that comfort zone, it's a slow death.
When you're talking about showing up, see, there's one of two possible outcomes for anything. And there's a new show on Netflix about the Menendez brothers who murdered their parents.
Oh yeah, in
I don't know if
Beverly
you
Hills.
remember
There,
that.
I was living. Yeah, I was working and living right outside of Beverly. I was working in Beverly Hills.
Yeah,
Lived right outside of Beverly Hills when that was
right.
happening back in the '90s, I think.
It
Yeah,
was. And so the documentary, it's like a docudrama, but it
yeah,
reveals that you thought, oh, these are cold-blooded killers, they're monsters, they're evil. Yes, but they were abused sexually, mentally, emotionally, spiritually by their father and
and they
their
were spoiled
mother.
rotten with everything materialistic.
Well,
Yeah,
but see, that's the side effect of the other terrible treatment that they had as children, because there was a huge amount of guilt. So there was total manipulation and control. But it also shows how the mother didn't even like her own kids because the father gave them all of his attention. So the reason I'm bringing this up, though, is because there's two possible outcomes for every circumstance in life. Really, there's a good outcome and a bad one. And if you start your life with the odds stacked against you, I have to say that part of it, it's a 50, responsibility is a 50-50 proposition, because up to a certain point, it isn't your fault what happens to you. You brought into the world, you come into the hands of these people that are supposed to care for you and guide you. If they do a good job, then up to that point in time where you start to make your own decisions and your own choices about who you want to be and don't want to be, that helps you in that direction. But if you don't get the good side of that, if you get the downside of it, then we're all struggling with a past that we carry around like a bag of bricks. And you and I have talked about this bag of bricks: abuse, neglect, manipulation, control, over
it
loving in the
defaults
wrong way.
into that black
Right.
hole, that
Yeah.
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It all goes into that bag of bricks that people carry around. And after watching some of this documentary, it makes you think to yourself, how could parents have done this to their own kids? The father was using the children at the age of 6 or 7 for sex, having affairs on his wife. You think about it and you go, how could a person do that to his own children? And then it makes you wonder if they really got what they deserved, having their heads blown off by their sons. And so who created the monsters here? Who created
yeah.
they created the outcome without even a care in the world. They destroyed these two really good looking, handsome, potentially successful young men. And then there was also discussion of whether or not there was incest between the two boys because of their sexual abuse. You see, my point though is 50% of it, that's up to a certain point, is the responsibility of the people that are taking care of you. But then at another point, you have to take over ownership of your own destiny. And most people have not done that. They've stayed in the groove that was set for them, and they've allowed the past and including the present to reinforce the experiences they've had in their life. Some people try to compensate. A lot of people do things to try to be the opposite of their parents, those progressive TV commercials. We can't
Yeah,
stop you from
yeah.
being
I'm going to
like your
be the
parents.
opposite of what my
Right.
parents were, like that.
Yeah.
But you're
So
still
you
living a
go to the
reaction. You're still living in a reaction.
exactly. You're
Yeah,
just the effect of some other cause, whether it
yeah.
was your upbringing or you've decided that you. And so I'm just
And
saying.
people, in my experience, people that don't really deal with that stuff in themselves, they don't really handle that stuff of their past, and they go in
Mm-mm.
to fix it, improve it, that they're not that, they're living in a reaction. Those demons rear their head in different ways.
Yeah.
You're like that man in the mirror. What was that old movie? That guy who lived,
Oh, the portrait
you
of
know,
Dorian Gray.
yeah, the portrait of Dorian Gray. This
Yes.
good
Yeah.
looking,
Yeah.
handsome,
Charismatic.
successful
Yeah.
guy who was doing terrible things,
Yeah.
but no one knew about it. In the background, he's doing terrible things
Yeah.
in his life to others. But eventually, that there was a mirror in the film.
No,
It wasn't. Yeah,
it's a very interesting point that he
yeah.
made a deal with the devil.
Oh,
And
yeah,
there
yeah.
was a beautiful portrait, like a full life-size portrait of him. And he
That's
made a
it.
deal with the devil that all of his sins would show up on the portrait.
Yeah, that was the mirror. Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah, that
portrait.
was the
Yeah,
way
yeah.
but in the end of the story, he went to look at it because it was behind curtains so that no one could see it, not even him. And when he pulled the curtains aside,
Years
it was
later.
so
Yeah,
hard. Yes, it was after
he
years
was
of
a
debauchery.
monster.
It
He
was
was
a
a
monster,
beast.
and
Yeah.
he killed himself.
Yeah, when he saw his
Yeah.
real reflection, who
Yeah.
he had become.
Yeah.
But on
Yeah.
the front, he was like the Joneses, right?
He
The
was
perfect.
Mr. Clean.
Yeah. Everything out, public facing was
Yeah.
look good, and it was all facade. But
Yeah.
there's so much truth in that.
Oh, there
Like
is.
people go along living in certain ways, thinking they get away with things, and we don't get away with anything in life. The truth always emerges in one way or the other. We can avoid it, we can ignore it, we can pretend we're something that whatever that we're running from in our past it's always present
Let me say about
until
that.
there's some kind of inner transformation, until there's some kind of, whatever you want to call it, repentance, a laying down of pride, forgiveness, self-awareness, growth, growing and working with yourself, within yourself, working on yourself, not as a project, but but just a human being who's committed to being the best. I don't know if
But
best,
see,
but
Darren,
a true, like, discovering your potential, discovering who you were really born to be before the world
right.
interrupted all of that.
Yeah. See,
Your
the
path.
problem is that the truth, you talk about the hound of heaven, the truth will follow you your entire life until
It's
these
conscience in the
issues.
background. Yeah.
Yeah, think of it as a hunting hound on a trail. You can never ever get away from the truth. It pursues you. But so does deceit. So does deception. So does distraction. So to the
Denial. Yeah.
denial,
Mm-hmm.
to the extent that you try to hide from the truth, to that extent you are beset by things that help you. So the distractions, the food, the drugs, the sex, whatever it may be, those things are only temporary distractions and temporary reliefs from the truth that's nagging at you, that is begging you to awaken. Now, when you awaken, then your potential begins. If you don't awaken, you're going to live your whole life in a sort of a waking coma where you feel like your life doesn't make sense, never did. You don't know why. You don't feel like you don't belong. Every relationship you have is beset with problems. And again, I have to go back to the greatest teacher ever. He said, know the truth and it shall make you free. But if you are going to avoid the truth, then you're going to be enchained by it. See, so the very truth that could set you free can also keep you in chains, in bondage to all of the things that help you escape from it. And this is what my dad coined the phrase, emotion is the mother of addiction. So the emotions around and the struggle that we all have with truth in our own lives, and I say that there's a truth deficit, whatever it may be, it could be a really small truth, that it has a rippling effect throughout the course of your life. And you just simply have to go, okay, what is it that I'm not seeing?
Yeah. I know I've hit points, very low points in my life, and I just couldn't see, how did I create this collision in my own life? How did I create this? I couldn't see it. And then I'm like, just on my knees, God, just show me, what am I not seeing?
Yeah.
What am I not seeing that I need to see?
Yeah.
And usually it's those those lowest points where you are in some kind of spiritual crisis, you hit rock bottom, that a door opens. And I think if you have a genuinely sincere heart to know, it's almost like you hit rock bottom and then like a trap door beneath you, it opens up and some blue sky opens up and you start seeing. If you have the humility, the willingness, the desire to see, you're given the ability to see. There's that saying, I think it's from the Bible, the knock and seek and you shall find, knock and the door will open.
Ask.
There's so much truth to
and
that.
You shall receive.
And you
But
shall receive.
If you don't ask, it's funny because a lot of times people will say, and this is common, don't tell me, I don't want to know. You know what I mean?
I don't want to know the bad news. I don't want any feedback about myself. Yeah. I don't want to know. Yeah. Good luck with that. Common. Good luck with that. That just keeps you where you are with more of the same of what you've already got that you actually don't want. But it's a willingness to ask. So here's
the thing about the truth. Yeah. It is woven into the fabric of the human matrix that we live in. And because without truth, and here's another thing I have to say to people is that if you resent the things that are hurting you, that is like quicksand. And it's in a sense, it's like drinking
it too.
It does.
And
it gives
like
it
quicksand.
More power.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like drinking poison and thinking it's going to kill somebody else. So it's a good thing that the truth never lets us alone. I have to say this because that's what anxiety has something to do with it. There's a lot of different degrees of anxiety. But if you just turn around and ask, and you'll receive an insight about it, why do I feel so much anxiety? If you want the answer, please don't give it to yourself because you don't know. But an answer can be provided to you through intuition. And this is why meditation is so powerful because it opens up an intuitive pathway between you and what's left behind you, the wake of things that are left behind you.
And the steps to take. It gives you a light upon your path from where you are in the present.
Right.
There's a light. That higher intuition gives you the light to see the next step to take.
Oh, it illuminates the path.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing too. There's no need for will. There's no need to exert your will. I am going to do this. No, it doesn't work that way.
That creates more resistance.
That's a force of your will.
And what you resist persists, as Jung said. Yeah.
That's right. So in a way, there is a surrender to the truth, right? And when you stop running away from it, you push it away, you say, I don't know, I don't know, I don't want to know. When you say, I do want to know, when you ask, you'll receive.
Yeah.
But if you really want to know, now, if you're
it only takes the willingness to step out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because that truth
and the reason why
has its own discomfort.
The reason why addictions are so hard to kick is because they bring you instant comfort, distraction. People, when they go to the bar and they sit there and start drinking, they start to go, oh, I'm decompressing.
Get a dopamine hit. Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't drink. It's where your instant gratification fixes are, whether it's food. A lot of times you
Yeah.
smell smoking, you go, oh my God, this is a person, dead man walking.
It's just distracting, numbing.
It's
Yeah.
numbing. It's
Keeping cloud,
anesthetizing.
a
Yeah.
fog.
Yeah.
Yeah. A blurry world.
And guess
Yeah.
what? It's all about the truth.
Yeah.
Just
And it
say,
starts with
what's the truth?
seeing one truth.
Yeah, that's it.
Just one truth about yourself.
Yeah.
The commitment and meaning to me they mean the same thing.
Yeah.
Like commitment is where meaning's found.
100%.
And I know for myself is my life, again, back from when my very first son was born, I could see that it was through a commitment to something bigger than myself, to others. Suddenly as my business is growing, I'm now hiring employees. I'm responsible for them and their well-being and their livelihood. I'm responsible for more things and for others and making a difference in the world, and as you empower others, you get your own kind of power. As you bring freedom to others, you get your own kind of, but it's through giving that we're receiving. And maybe it's like a currency, but it's not just what we put out, and there is that, but it's the commitment is where through commitment and responsibility to others, committed to something greater than ourselves, is where we find meaning and purpose. And anxiety either disappears or it falls way back into the background. But anxiety is speaking something. It's telling us something. It's like when we're doing something to our body that we shouldn't be doing, the body speaks in pain, in discomfort, in dis-ease. The body speaks, and so does the self, could say.
Yeah.
When your anxiety is telling you something, you need to wake up to something, but it's through commitment that we also get to discuss. So again, when we're self-conscious, we're anxious. But when you have an outer focus, something other than yourself, others, you're taken out of just thinking of being self-absorbed. And then living in your own imagination and your own fantasy and story, which is a further rabbit hole into a black hole of despair and anxiety and depression and yada, yada. But there's something about being committed that we find meaning, and we are given a path to discover ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
an expanding self.
I have to ask the audience.
Yeah.
Answer this question. Are you responsible for the way you were raised? No, you were not. You were raised by people who had authority and control and the responsibilities.
And maybe they were just passing along exactly what was given to them from their parents and their parents, grandparents, the worm that never dieth. It just keeps getting passed along generation to generation.
The problem with responsibility is that you are not responsible. See, if you depersonalize, think about it.
Yeah, it's good.
You depersonalize your relationship with this idea of responsibility. First thing you're going to see is that this is not I didn't choose this. This is not what I wanted.
Yeah.
See, this was foisted upon me. It was put upon me. It was forced upon me.
Yeah.
So 50%, half of everything has to do, and I said this earlier, it's not your fault.
It's really good. It's really,
You're not responsible for what was done to you.
Yeah.
But what you are responsible for now is what you do about it.
To take responsibility for your life now, which includes, what are you not responsible for?
Make that list first.
Yeah. What are you not responsible for
elimination
that you're still responding to or in reaction to?
Right.
Okay. This is a great place to wrap up.
There you go.
Thank you all for listening up to this point. David, you got a book for us?
I do.
Hello Inside. Self-mastery over negative energy. Oh, that's good. That's good. Where can they find that?
That can find that at my website at escapeyourmindsprison.com. And if you spend a half an hour a day is all it really takes. maybe 15 minutes at a time, twice a day. Get quiet and
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
Don't give yourself answers. Just
Yeah.
ask, where did this go
Listen.
wrong? When did this happen?
Get
Why am I
present.
acting the way I do? Just those are the basic questions
Yeah.
right there. And then
And don't
wait
go
for
into
to be shown.
why or try to fix it or
Don't fix
figure it out.
Don't do it.
Put all that aside and just open up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Get present.
Yeah.
Nothing to fix, nothing to figure out.
Nope.
Nothing to do about it. Be with it. Get present. And watch those thoughts, and whatever's coming up, let it come up and let it go. Start that practice
I wanted
today.
to make one more point, which I
real
almost
quick,
forgot.
then we're going to jump.
When I first started meditating, I was, I think, 18 years old, maybe a little before 18. And I would sit on my couch and I try to get quiet, and then my mind would produce images of my friends surfing and doing things.
Yeah.
And I'd start to get anxiety, get angsty. Like I wanted to get out there and be part of that, what those guys were doing. I didn't want to miss anything. I had FOMO, right? I didn't want to miss. But then one day I saw this reality, and that was that anxiety was not my enemy. The anxiety of sitting there and struggling with all these images that were being produced, that wasn't my enemy. It was my friend, and it was trying to show me that I didn't need any of that.
Yeah.
And that it was still going to be there, by the way, no matter how long I spent being free from it, I could always go back to it. But at a certain point, I realized I didn't need it at all. And I just wanted to make that point. Anxiety
really
is not
good.
your enemy.
Get still and know.
Yeah.
If you check out baronbaptiste.com, there's a free meditation on there too that you can find, and start getting present, meditate. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening. I'm Baron Baptiste. Until next time, keep disrupting the drift, stay bold, and keep truing up. And peace be with you.